Morning, everybody, and welcome to this session with myself, Neil Kaye, and my colleague, Charlotte Campbell. We're both research fellows at Closer, and we're going to be talking you through and introducing our new Closer training hub, giving you a demo of what it does and what kind of information you can find on there. So, an outline of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we do at Closer and who we are. Then we're going to go into a bit more depth about our new free Training Hub online resource, and we'll walk you through each of the main sections. Charlotte will take you through the cross-study research and data management sections, and I'll pick up again to talk you through the dissemination and impact and the training opportunity sections. Right, so just by way of introduction to Closer, we're a partnership of social and biomedical longitudinal population studies, the UK Data Service, and the British Library. And we've been funded by UKRI, in particular the ESRC, since 2012. We're based at UCL in the Social Research Institute, and we have a mission to increase the visibility, use, and impact of longitudinal population studies, data, and research, and to ensure that longitudinal evidence is used to address health, social, economic, and environmental challenges facing the UK now and in the future. A lot of our work is centered around facilitating interdisciplinary research and encouraging cross-study analysis. And we do this by focusing on 4 primary areas: data discoverability. We increase the use of visibility and awareness of longitudinal population study data through our research tool, Closer Discovery. Data enhancement and innovations covers our work on data harmonization and data linkage. Training and capacity building, we provide training capacity building opportunities for researchers and for those running longitudinal population studies. And this is where our new training hub sits. Policy and dialogue, where we mobilize data and research from multiple longitudinal population studies and provide evidence and insights to policy and decision makers, mainly through engaging with government departments and the parliamentary scrutiny process. We represent multiple longitudinal population studies across the UK. We currently have 19, and here they are represented, partner studies, which was expanded from our initial 8 just a few years ago. These comprise some of the most well-known and widely used studies on a national and regional level. So, for example, national studies include the British birth cohorts, so that's the 1946, 58, 1970, and the Millennium Cohort Study, the ONS Longitudinal Study, ELSA, the English Longitudinal Study of Aging, Generation Scotland, and Understanding Society, and regional studies, for example, Born in Bradford, Southampton Women's Study, and ALSPAC, the Avon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children. And also, just to give you an overview of the type of resources we have, as I mentioned, Discovery is our innovative research tool that allows researchers to search, explore, and assess data from multiple longitudinal population studies in unprecedented detail. Our Learning Hub is a free online educational resource, including the basics of longitudinal research. We have various guidance, trackers, and templates for supporting longitudinal researchers to mobilize findings in the policy landscape contained in our Policy Hub. And now we add to our suite of resources the new Training Hub, containing more in-depth materials for researchers using longitudinal population studies. So hopefully many of you will be already familiar with our Learning Hub, which has already existed for several years now and is aimed at beginners and newcomers to longitudinal population studies. And if you're not familiar with longitudinal studies at all, I do recommend you start here. There's a lot of introductory information here with learning modules and case studies, which can help you to explore different types of research the longitudinal population studies can help you with. But what I'm here to talk about today is our complementary resource, which we've been working on, the Closer Training Hub. And this is designed for those who are more familiar with longitudinal population studies. You're aware of what they are and how they can be used, but perhaps you'd like a little more information about certain aspects of your research, or to know where you can find additional guidance or training on various areas of your research. So here is the main homepage and the URL, which I hope you'll all go to when you have time. And you can also access it via the Closer homepage. It's under the Resources tab. And as you see, it's broken down into 4 main sections. Cross-study research, which provides information about how to conduct cross-study research, including data harmonization. The data management section, which gives you guidance on how to manage your data throughout the whole length of the research project. Dissemination and impact, which talks about why dissemination is important and how you can communicate and disseminate your research for maximum impact. And finally, we have the training opportunities, which is a directory of external providers of training relevant to using longitudinal population studies. So I'm going to pass over to Charlotte now, and she'll take you through the first 2 of these sections.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, so first I'm going to give you a brief tour demo of the cross-study research section. So this section is split into kind of 6 main sections. It first takes you through some sort of introductory material, so what is cross-study research, and some basics about harmonization, and then some examples of harmonization in action before moving on to methodological guidance, and then some kind of signposting to where you can find cross-study data guides and harmonized data. So if we first focus on the introduction section, this covers kind of what is cross-study research, why we do it, the challenges that are associated with doing it, as well as some of the kind of main considerations that you need to think about when conducting this sort of research. The next section is all about harmonization basics. So this focuses on data harmonization and gives sort of key terms in a glossary of all these terms that you might find when reading about data harmonization. And then this section also has the next part in a little bit about harmonization methods. So different ways in which people have, or you might consider, harmonizing data, and all of the kind of pros and cons of each of those, and the specific considerations with these different methods. Next in this section, it's all about harmonization in action. So it gives some examples of projects that have completed harmonization of data across various topics. So first, we have some examples of the harmonization projects that we funded at Closer, including 4 harmonized data sets that we have published and are available to download through the UK Data Service. So these cover sort of BMI, body composition, socioeconomic measures, childhood environment and adult well-being, and mental health and childhood across some of the Closer partner studies. And you can go and look at them and see how they harmonize their data. They come with documentation all about how, like, the process that they followed. And in this section, we also have some information about other harmonization projects. So things like Harmony, how they harmonize data, the Gateway to Global Aging, and other examples that you can use as inspiration or information if you want to learn more. The next part of this section is all about methodological guidance, so a bit more specific kind of signposting and links to where you can find more information and guidance about particular methods for cross-study research and data harmonization. And then in this section, we also have a bit about measurement of invariance and standardized scales. In the next section, it's all about cross-study data guides. So these are guides where you can explore the available data on a particular topic area across multiple studies. And so we've produced some of these at Closer. We have one on diet, on physical activity, and on cognition. So they're linked to there, and it also links to the catalogue of mental health measures. So these are all guides where, you can see a huge amount of information about the data that's been collected on these topics across multiple studies, if you're wanting to kind of understand and consider if any of these are kind of comparable across study. And then finally, in this section, we have some information about harmonized data sources. So directions and tips on where you can find sources of already harmonized data. And these mainly focus on the UK, but some other data sources that are across the world. Some of them contain studies, harmonized data from studies from across country, as well as across region. So that's the cross-study research section. Now I'm going to give a brief tour of the data management section. So this section contains two main kind of topics sections, and the first is all about understanding research data management. So the first bit of this is about basics of research data management, and then we have some common terms. And all of this information is focused kind of from the lens of somebody carrying out secondary data analysis using like longitudinal population studies, but is also kind of relevant as a whole to research data management, be it primary, secondary. It's all kind of really useful information to know and to have. Will help you understand secondary data and the processes that it's been through kind of to get to you, even if you're not carrying it out yourself. So the first part of this section is all about basics. So what is data management? Why do we do it? Why it's important to do? And specific things that might be kind of more important or to consider when doing when using secondary data. The next part of this sort of introduction is a common terms glossary, which contains a raft of terms that you might encounter when learning about learning about data management. The next section under data management is all about data management in practice, and this is where we kind of break it, a project down into the different sections of a project from the start to the end, and kind of lay out all of the relevant processes and considerations all to do with data management. So the first section in practice is all about planning data management. So before you even start a project, what are the sort of things that you might need to plan? And it particularly specifically kind of focuses on data management plans, which are kind of a more formal document to plan out data management that were often required by funders, but even if not required, they're a nice way to kind of structure a data kind of management plan for the project. The next section is all about collecting, storing and processing data. So kind of once you've, right at the start of the project, how do you first find and access existing data? So how do you access it, the different methods and levels of access, and tips for kind of identifying existing data that might be useful for your project. Next in here, we have information about documenting data and any derived data sets that you might be producing based on an original data set. And so we have some tips and guidance about producing documentation and some metadata and documentation standards. But so it's useful if you're producing any documentation, but also it's got helpful information about documentation for if you're using it. So it has information about different levels of documentation, so you can understand what you're reading and what the documentation you're using is referring to. Next, we have some information about storing data. So kind of specific considerations that you might need to make if you're storing primary or secondary data, how to store it, where is appropriate to store it, and information there. Then we have some information about processing data. So before you kind of do any analysis, what sort of steps might you need to do on that raw data? So information about data cleaning, merging, tips and guidance links all around that. Last, in this section, we have a bit about anonymization. And this is, you might think, particularly useful for primary data, but it's also got a lot of information that is useful for understanding secondary data and why your secondary data might look the way that it does, and good kind of background information all about these topics. The next big topic in data management section is all about analysis. So first we have information about understanding your data. So before you kind of go headfirst into analysis, some key considerations, particularly of longitudinal population studies, that you might need to be aware of and take into account before any analysis. So things like any survey weighting, any question routing, yes, that you might need to kind of consider to make sure that your analysis is correct and what you want it to be. Next in this, we have information about documenting your code. So when carrying analysis, you're most likely going to be using some form of code to do this. So we have some tips, guidance about documenting that code for yourself, for others who may use that code, and sort of best practice of how kind of comments and documenting the code can look. And on a similar vein, we have some programming and coding guidance and links to kind of other training and guidance for particular programs. So SPSS Data R. So yeah, to give you some more in-depth tips about programming and making kind of the code slick and readable, and maybe reproducible, or any kind of element that you want your code to be. Finally, in this bit, we have some information about specific data types. So these are different sort of data types that you might encounter when using longitudinal population studies or other studies that kind of look slightly different to maybe the standard social science data that might have some specific considerations associated with them. And then finally, in the data management section, we have things all about preserving and sharing your data and code. So this covers sort of tips and guidance on how and where to share data, be it, so this is relevant to primary data, but also to any kind of derived data that you might be producing and wanting to share if possible. So we have some information and guidance on how you can do that, as well as access and sharing conditions. So the considerations that you might need to put on any data if you're intending to access, the access levels you would like to set on anything you're sharing, some information about data citations, and also how and where to share code. If you can't share the data, can you share the code, and how to do that, how best to do that, where sort of places that you can share code. I'm going to hand you back to Neil for the next section.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. So moving on, the dissemination and impact part of the training hub is divided into two main sections. The first section provides some overview about why dissemination is important, which I think can really help you to think about your own research dissemination strategy more widely. And in conjunction with that, we've developed a few case studies which shows how well thought out research dissemination and producing appropriate outputs can, in practice, lead to impact on policy, on practice, or on societal behaviours. We currently have a series of 3 case studies, one on obesity, one on inequalities in mental health during COVID, and another on children's food insecurity. What these do is to showcase impactful research dissemination, taking research by closer or research which has been done using closer partner studies, and showing how research dissemination can translate into policy impact, changes in practice, or increasing public understanding. The other part of the dissemination impact section provides guidance on how to mobilize your research using different strategies and activities to maximize its impact. At the moment, we have 5 subsections, one on academic writing, one showing you how to use social media, how to create infographics, writing blogs, and engaging with policymakers. As one example, then, we have one way of using mobilizing your research, which is through social media. And in this section, we highlight the general benefits of using social media to disseminate your research, such as opportunities for networking, promoting, keeping yourself safe. We also give an overview of the main social media platforms, including X, which used to be Twitter, of course, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And we then go on to provide some best practice tips and guidance. I also want to flag that through the Engage with Policymakers section, you can access our complimentary policy hub, which has a whole range of resources to help you mobilize your research by engaging with policymakers, with nice explainers, a glossary, and practical guidance on how to get your research in front of policymakers. So the last section of the 4 main sections on the Training Hub is the Training Opportunities section, which is our repository of different training providers. The directory comprises a list of different training providers relevant to research using longitudinal population studies. You can filter the providers using a wide range of filters, from cost or how the courses are run, what kind of level it's at, the different themes, and whether they include training on specific programs. Once you've identified the provider you're interested in, you can simply click through to their website to search for specific training courses and events that they host. And that's it, really. That's a very quick kind of whistle-stop tour of what the Training Hub provides. Of course, we do want you to feel free to explore it yourself and let us know if you have any feedback. You can also sign up to our newsletters and blog alerts by scanning the QR code here or by going to our website. We'd love to keep in touch with you. Thank you very much for listening.